Alright, this is going to be probably, I think, the last series of the re-uploaded, redid paranormal videos I did years ago that were just horribly grammared and a lot of ums and stuttering. This one's going to be kind of probably all over the place as far as like the locations that I'm at, so it's kind of just going to be random, because at this current house that I live in, which is the house that I lived in during most of like high school, because I moved back home so I could go back to school. It's kind of like, not really a long story, but it's just a story I don't really want to get into. But I moved back home for that reason, and personal reasons that have to do with my family. But anyway, in this house, mind you, it's a newer house. It's probably the newest house we've ever lived in. Because prior to us, the only people that have ever lived here was the original owners. Whereas anywhere else we lived, there was always like a ton of different residents that had been there before us. So I haven't had a lot of experiences here, which I'm attributing to the fact that it's just a new house. There's not really a lot of residual energy or anything. Probably, I don't even think there's been any deaths in this house as far as I know. And it's not the fact that I've gotten older, because honestly, as I've gotten older, I don't have nearly as many like weird experiences that I used to. It's like my most active time was probably from like I would say 16 to 22, and mainly that's because my friend Courtney's house, her house was ridiculously active, and during the time that all that was going on, I lived here. So if it was just the houses that were the issue, I would be having experiences here at the same time as my friend Courtney's house. But it's not. It's, I don't know, like, it's hard to explain. Basically, my theory about the whole paranormal thing is that, and people have said this too, so it's not like an original idea, but according to my experiences and what I've figured out about it, it seems like these things are either manifested or fed, by lack of a better term, by our energies. And during the time when I was 16 to 22, I was having a lot of issues, like emotional, psychological. I mean, I wasn't like crazy or anything, but you know, like depression, anxiety, that kind of thing. And it seems like whatever these things are, they are attracted to that. I think it does feed them on some level, because when my energy is heightened, I will have experiences, whereas when I'm kind of mellow, which is like 90% of the time now, and it has been this way for years, when I'm mellow or my energy's low, I don't really experience too much. So that's just my theory. But anyway, as far as the experiences that have happened in this house, I haven't really had any, like, as far as ghosts or anything like that inside the house. The only one experience I've had in relation is when I was walking around the neighborhood, and it was, I think, 2 streets over. I was ironically 16, as I mentioned. You know, that was when the most activity was going on as far as like my age and all that. But I would take walks at night because, I don't know, I found them refreshing, and you know, I've never been a very active person, so I would take walks and I did enjoy them. And this is back when the portable Discman things were popular. So I had that on and I was listening to music, and I was on the way back from my walk. And like I said, I was only 2 streets over, and it was like 9:30 at night, something like that. And I was looking up at the sky, and I was just making a mental note of how clear it was, because in Cleveland we have a lot of clouds. it's rarely ever very clear outside. And we go through long bouts of where it's never really that sunny. So to see a really black night sky and a lot of stars is kind of special and unique, I guess. So I was, like I said, making a mental note of like how clear the sky was, and I've always had a fascination with space, like outer space, that kind of stuff. So I was like looking up, and then I noticed this bright light, which I thought was a star at first, because it looked like a star, and it shined like a star, but very bright. It wasn't a plane, and that was like the first instance, because like I'm mentally looking at it, I'm like, oh, that's a nice star, and then all of a sudden I just notice it moving. And I'm like, okay, it's not a star. I wonder if it's an airplane. Then it starts moving in this erratic movement in a way that an airplane can't move, basically. So I'm like, okay, it's not a plane. And then I'm thinking, okay, it's a helicopter, because, you know, we do have a hospital that's relatively close to here, and every now and then we will get, like, a hospital helicopter that flies by. And then it starts moving very quickly, like, in a diagonal shooting motion, as if to demonstrate that it's not a helicopter. So I'm like, okay, I don't know what the hell this is. And the whole time I'm just staring up at this thing. And the whole experience, or whatever you want to call it, probably lasted 30 seconds, if that. It's kind of hard to tell, to be aware of time when there's nothing to compare it to, basically. And when you're in like that kind of situation where something's spectacular like that, something so out of the ordinary, it's hard to measure time. So I was staring at it for a good length of time, and then after I'm like made a note that it wasn't a helicopter, you know, it stopped its little maneuvering, I guess, and it literally just zipped off to the left. So I don't know. It's definitely a UFO, but people are confused about what a UFO is. A UFO does not necessarily mean it's a spacecraft or a craft of any sort. It just means it's unidentified flying object. That's all it means. So it can mean a number of things, but a lot of people assume that when people say they see a UFO, it's a spacecraft, but it's not necessarily the case. And in my instance, all I saw was a light, so I don't know what it was. I do think it was something extraordinary. Like, it wasn't any kind of craft I've ever seen as far as, like, our craft, like, human craft. But I'm not so quick to jump to the fact that, or the conclusion that it's a spacecraft, because I don't know. I didn't see any metallic parts of it. I only saw a light. I will say that it had some level of intelligence to it, because it seemed to respond to my thinking. And I don't know, like, I just had this weird feeling that it knew I was watching it, and I don't know, like, it knew I was there. Like, it's just like this awareness. But, and another thing to note that's very important is that the entire time I was watching this thing, my music stopped. And I didn't even notice my music stopped because I was so transfixed by this thing. The only reason I was aware that it stopped is because the minute or second it zipped off, my music just comes blaring back into my ears. Because I like to listen to my music pretty loud. So it was kind of like a startling, like, because all of a sudden, you know, there's silence, and then, boom, sound in your ears. So that was really weird. And the second thing that was weird about that, specifically, is that my Discman at the time was a really crappy one. It didn't have memory to it, So when it would skip, because, you know, it would occasionally skip because you're walking and movement kind of jolts it around, it would stop and it would just, like, either it started the song from the beginning or it stopped completely. I don't remember which. But in this instance, when that thing zipped off and it kicked back on right where it left off. So that's really weird. So I don't know. I don't know what to think about that. And the fact that some of my other experiences kind of are related to what that possibly could be is just kind of weird. Like, one instance, randomly, you know, you can chalk it up to, like, just whatever, but when you have, like, 3 or 4 things that kind of go together, it's just kind of strange. And I don't know. I'm not going to say that I'm an abductee or anything, because I'm not even 100% sure that people are abducted, or at least not in the way that it's portrayed. But I do believe that I might have had some kind of contact. I don't feel negatively about it. Like, I don't jump to the conclusion that they're negative, because a lot of people do. Like, I don't know. That's just my personal beliefs. I just think it's really, I don't know about hypocritical, but narrow-minded, I guess, to assume that an entire species, or whatever you want to call it, being, a whole group of beings, is one particular way. That's like saying humans in general, like, all of humans are bad or good. It's not that way. There's some that are good, there's some that are bad, and some that are kind of in between. So to jump to a conclusion that a whole group of beings, like a whole species, whatever, is negative, is just stupid. I don't know. I don't know about anything else that's happened. I can't really think of it. My grandma's house, one thing that's kind of weird, and this goes back to when I was a kid. Long time ago, my parents were still together. So my brother was like maybe 5. I was like 9 or 10. My brother's 4 years younger than me. I've said that in a different video, but whatever we were really young. And we were over my grandparents, because my family lives in Michigan. I live in Ohio. So we would go up and visit every now and then. So my dad, my mom, my brother, and me went to visit my grandma for some holiday. I think it was either Easter or Christmas. I don't remember which. And my grandfather had just given my grandmother a grand piano. She used to play piano. It was really nice. He spent a good amount of money on it. It was like wood, and I don't really know exactly what it was, but it was expensive. And it was in the living room. We were, I believe, staying in the basement. And the next morning, from like when we were staying the night, my grandma's pitching a fit. Like, I kind of woke up, I think, to her, like, not yelling at my dad, but yelling to my dad about somebody marked her piano. And my grandma, like, I'm pretty close to my grandma, but, like, back then, she was kind of a bitch. Like, I'm not even gonna lie. She had issues, and I think she'd be the first to acknowledge that. So she decided that she was gonna do, like, this CSI kind of crap, because somebody marked, like, engraved an A into the piano with, like, a knife, or, like, you would, like, lovers, how they, like, etch their initials into a tree. That's what whoever did. And she made both me and my brother write an A. Like, she didn't tell us at first why, but she made us write a capital A so she could, like, analyze it from, like, the piano to ours. And back then, I made my A's really weird. Like, I didn't make an angular A, I made, like, it was basically, like, a larger version of a lowercase a. So it wasn't me, and I wouldn't do something like that anyway. And my brother, he was only, like, 5 or something. Like, he was really young, so the likelihood of him doing that is just, like, pretty much non-existent. And I don't know who else would have done it, like, because it was all adults besides me and my brother, so we still don't know who did it. It was, like, on the side of the like, there's, like, an arm, kind of the piano, and she was so mad. And then the other thing that happened is, one time when my brother was visiting my grandmother, this weird burn hole appeared in the ceiling kind of by the bathroom, and she blamed it on my brother. She claims that he was standing on a chair, like, she didn't see it happening, but she imagined, or has it in her mind, that he must have been standing on a chair with a lighter or something, or some kind of fire by the ceiling and made a hole. Because it looked like, that's what it looked like, to be honest. But he sweared up and down that he didn't do it. He was kind of a bad kid, and as I said before in a different video, he lied a lot. So I wouldn't have put it past him to lie about that back then. But I've asked him, like, a year ago. Like, he's 25 now. I'm like, she thinks that this happened. I'm just curious, like, did you do that? And he swears up and down that he did not do that. He could be lying. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility, but what would be the point? Like, 20 years later, to lie about something like that. Like, actually, it would have been a little bit later than that, because I think he was, like, 8 when that happened. Maybe 7. It's kind of hard to know, but, I mean, he was young. He was a kid. So it's like, why lie about that? But I don't know why people lie in general, so I don't know.